bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.
Welcome into Game Week on SiriusXM, where every single week we take a deep dive into the USL Super League, talking with coaches and players across the league and giving you all the up-to-date information on what's going on as we head into the latter half of the season. Joined as always by my co-host Marion Crowder, I'm Anna Witte. The Ascent, who win the inaugural Players Shield. We chat about how the Ascent grabbed that #1 spot at the top of the table. We also talk about the standings and what's to come as match day 34 is around the corner. And we chat with Carolina's Riley Parker about the season for Carolina Ascent and her exciting day at NASCAR this past weekend. Marion,
Anna.
I can't with the Ascent. What a season for them. How exciting that this really special group of girls are able to clinch that #1 spot after a tie against Tampa Bay this past weekend. It was a 1-1 tie in Carolina. Carolina, at the beginning of the season, they went on an 11-game unbeaten streak that really separated themselves at the beginning of the season from the rest of the league. They've scored goal after goal after goal, 44 goals on the season, 22 goals in their last 7 games. When you look at the 26 matches Carolina has played up into this point, what was the one thing that they achieved, or what's the one thing they got right to be able to achieve the first ever trophy?
So many things. To put into perspective that you just mentioned, their first loss did not come until November 16th. Of 2024. We started play well before that. And I think, there was even a little skid there for Carolina, right? Where it was like, are they figuring it out? Are they regressing? What's the deal? And it's just been the commitment to professionalism, I think, plain and simple. The environment, the support, the tools available to the players, absolutely yes. But from a granular look, for me, it was Philip Poole's ability to maximize every player. And that's what I think we have seen shine through in the spring season. The only way for a coach to do that and to really do it right is to have every player understand their role within an organization, their role within the team, their role within the game model, right? All of those things matter. But Anna, as you know, and we've seen it from many coaches, that typically takes coaches years to figure out and to truly master. And I'm sure that Philip Poole is going to reflect and tweak some things to continue to grow in year 2. But to think that he's been able to accomplish that in his first year as a head coach is truly just outstanding to me. And I think second to that professionalism led by Philip Poole is the player buy-in. I think that the player buy-in that Carolina has showed can only be carried out when you have a locker room that is aligned to a really specific goal and a willingness to support that goal no matter what role you play within it. So those two things for me, I think, have ultimately what separated Carolina in a well-deserved Player Shield win.
You've hit the nail on the head with Philip Poole and what he's been able to do with this club. And you even look up the ranks with Carolina, like being a part of this club this season, being on the sideline, I've been able to see how intrinsic everything is. Their ownership has totally bought into what the Ascent want to accomplish in the Super League, from a financial standpoint to making sure the girls live 10 minutes away from the facility, to giving them an opportunity to go to the plunge house every week and infrared saunas and everything that they need in recovery, but also having the right staff in place from the beginning. And that starts with Philip Poole, but his assistants, the performance trainers, the athletic trainers, the assistants who work individually with the players. And that's always the conversation. Like, a lot of credit to Poole, but what the assistants are willing to do, staying after training, working on small details of players' games to make sure that they're at this place on May 21st is extremely important. So from the ownership, I just give a total round of applause to, and how they've really bought in, and they want to see Carolina be successful and women's soccer here in Charlotte specifically be successful. And they've accomplished that in year 1. There's a ton of growth left to be had, and they acknowledge that, and they want to win the championship, obviously. But because of the ownership, because of the head coach, and the girls that they've recruited to come and play for the Ascent, have made this a stellar first year. So Hats off to the Ascent. Really proud of that group. Really excited for them. And it's not done yet. They've got 2 regular season games, and then the playoffs will be hosted. The Ascent will host one of the playoff games on June 8th. The one team that Carolina hasn't beat yet this season is Tampa Bay. It was a 1-1 draw this past Saturday. So that's something that the players certainly know. And they've definitely consciously gone into that game acknowledging that. But yeah, I will see how it all plays out because Tampa Bay also clinched a playoff spot
Yeah.
with that 1-1 draw against Carolina.
Yeah, kudos to them. Note, it's pretty fitting, right, that the first team to hand Carolina that loss that we were referencing earlier on November 16th was indeed the Tampa Bay Sun, who seem pretty unstoppable right now. So kudos also to our friends down in Florida. Amazing spring fall season that they put together.
Yeah, so we've got 2 teams that have clinched a playoff spot. We're still waiting on those other 2 spots, and we've got plenty more to chat about when it comes to those playoffs right here on Game Week. So don't go anywhere. It's Game Week on Sirius XM.
Bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome back to Game Week on Sirius XM. Headed into match day 34, we've got Carolina and Tampa Bay clinching 2 of the playoff spots. Not sure the result of the DC Fort Lauderdale game Tuesday. We are recording this Tuesday afternoon. So the rest of the standings are ones that we can't comment on quite yet. But what we do know is Spokane did beat DC last Tuesday 2-1. They find themselves in that 3rd place before the Fort Lauderdale DC game kicks off Tuesday afternoon. Spokane has 18 days, essentially 2.5 weeks before they face Fort Lauderdale in their last game of the season. How does this impact this Spokane team and the run that they've been on recently?
Yeah, really good question. I think right now, we even heard it from Audrey Harding a couple of weeks ago when we had her on the show. Down the stretch, what you're really looking for as a coaching staff, as players, is consistency, right? Not to break a good rhythm. And Spokane has been on one of the best rhythms, if not the best. It may be second to Carolina that we've seen so far in the spring season with what they've been able to accomplish. And so you question how you mimic that same type of rhythm and that same type of tempo when you're going to go 18 days between your second to last game and your final game. And it's going to be a game that ultimately could, just depending on, I mean, the 9, 10 different scenarios that could play out, it could end up being an all or nothing match. So it's going to be important for Joe Johnson or coaching staff to mimic as best they can that same type of rhythm, that same type of schedule that Spokane has seen themselves on, that has ultimately gotten them into a really good game rhythm. Obviously, you're balancing that with rest and recovery and a little bit of mental freedom. And so the importance of things like film in a stretch like this is massively important because mentally it keeps you involved. It kind of keeps you into that same tempo and rhythm. And then ultimately balancing that with the physical rest and recovery, I think, is going to be a key sweet spot for Joe Johnson and company.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that Carolina Tampa Bay game and the 3 weeks off that Carolina had going into it. That result should have been different if Carolina hadn't had those 3 weeks off. I believe Carolina would have actually won that game because the form was so good. And Carolina continued to train. They had a scrimmage the weekend before. There was this really good effort to keep things consistent. However, it's not the same when you're not playing actual games in the Super League. So Spokane certainly is going to have themselves in a mental game, like it's certainly one where you have to mentally control the next couple of weeks and making sure that you're still making sure your body is up to the correct form. You're still training up to the correct form. And Fort Lauderdale has 2 games before they see Spokane. So we're going to see Fort Lauderdale looking to kind of change things around. They're currently, before that DC Fort Lauderdale game, they do have 37 points. So their max point is 46, still potential to be in a playoff position. But so we have that DC Fort Lauderdale game that happened yesterday. Other 3 games happening on match day 34 is Brooklyn against Carolina Saturday at 2:00. That'll be the final game of the season for Brooklyn, and their defender Tori Hansen is not available because of red card. Fort Lauderdale will take on Dallas Saturday at 7:30, and Tampa Bay will take on DC Saturday at 7:30 as well. DC has won they've won 2 in their last 3 games. And this will be the final game for Tampa Bay. So that one, honestly, Marion, DC Tampa Bay should be really interesting.
Look, I've been dying for DC and Lexington to play spoiler, and DC has definitely not disappointed us. With some of the results that DC has garnered in the last couple of weeks, it's made things even more interesting. I want to go back to what you said about Brooklyn and Carolina. Right now, Brooklyn in order. Okay, let me just lay it out for you guys. If Brooklyn wins over Carolina, everything is chaos. Okay, everything is chaos. Every scenario is potentially on the table, but it only matters if Brooklyn gets 3 points against Carolina. So, in
Right.
terms of us heading into this weekend of games, Brooklyn very much controls their own destiny in terms of staying in playoff contention. They have to win against Carolina to stay in that conversation. After that, things are wild, and we will leave it there in terms of Brooklyn.
So
All
I drafted up a scenario that I believe is going to happen after
right, let's hear it.
2034. So Carolina is going to beat Brooklyn, which means
Okay.
they're going to have 50 points and stay in that number one spot, which they
Okay.
will regardless of their results.
Yep.
Tampa Bay will tie DC, and it's going to become 44 points for Tampa Bay. So they'll stay in second place.
Okay.
Dallas is going to tie Fort Lauderdale and end up with 41 points. And then they will beat Spokane on goal differential. So they'll actually move into that third spot.
Yep.
I see Spokane, obviously, they say 41 points because they don't play this weekend. So fourth spot. And then Fort Lauderdale will tie Dallas, like I said earlier, 38 points for Fort Lauderdale. They'll beat Brooklyn on goal differential. And then I see Brooklyn losing to Carolina in that sixth spot and then therefore being eliminated from playoffs. So that would mean Dallas, Spokane, and Fort Lauderdale would be battling out for the last two spots in the
At
playoffs.
41 points. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, Dallas and Spokane at 41 and then Fort Lauderdale at 38 was my prediction.
Okay, so you would predict that Fort Lauderdale match against Spokane in a must-win scenario to get in.
Correct.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
I
Okay.
mean, I'm here
Okay.
for a fantastic decision
Love
day.
it.
Like, isn't that what we
I love
all
it.
want is to be frantically sitting in front of our devices?
Well, yeah, yes. Yeah, depending on how many devices you have. I have like three. I have my phone over here. I'm like looking at the standings. I've got this to make sure, I'm like saying it all correctly. I'm looking at you. Like we're gonna have to figure out like our monitor situation.
Yeah.
I have a scenario for you, okay?
Okay, I'm here.
We did lots of maths yesterday. We're not going to go into all of the scenarios because, quite literally, everyone, when I tell you that just about every scenario on the table from Fort Lauderdale, who, as Anna mentioned, currently at 6 because we don't know the result of that DC match, currently at 6, depending on the result against DC, they could be up to second. Okay, so that's like where we're looking at in terms of range, guys. So I'm going to give you a scenario I think is likely to happen. Fort Lauderdale wins against DC. They draw to Spokane, but they lose to Dallas. So the last three results for Fort Lauderdale would look like a win, a loss to Dallas, and a draw against Spokane.
Oh,
Okay?
wait, you were right though with me because the Fort Laud. Okay, sorry, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
what? What?
No, because I wasn't the DC game. They obviously lose to DC
Yeah.
Tuesday, and that
Yeah.
was my scenario. So go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So if Fort Lauderdale wins against DC,
Hmm.
they lose to Dallas. That would send Dallas to 43 points. Okay? A tie for Fort Lauderdale versus Spokane would send Spokane to 42 points, Fort Lauderdale to 41 points. And then our top four would end up being Carolina, Tampa Bay, Dallas, and Spokane.
Yeah.
So if you're a Dallas fan, obviously, if you get a result, you're pretty much in. I'm going to say that with kind of a abbreviated hand gesture.
Hmm.
But really for Dallas, even just to stay in the mix of playoff contention, of their next two, they really just need a draw. They need to garner a draw versus either Fort Lauderdale or Carolina at minimum to
Yeah.
stay in the conversation in those tiebreaker remarks. And I think that that's something that's very, very within their wheelhouse.
I'm with you on Dallas clinching a playoff spot eventually. I,
Yeah.
I think I think the question is going to end up being Spokane and Fort Lauderdale.
Same.
Who gets that
Same.
last spot? Because we're looking at games left. Fort Lauderdale
Yep.
has three. Dallas and Carolina both have two, and then Tampa Bay, Spokane, and Brooklyn all have one game left.
Yeah, let me lay out something for you. Simple scenario on Dallas, okay? If Dallas wins out, they're at 46 points on the
Right.
season. Okay? Assuming Tampa Bay wins versus DC, the fight for second is a bit wild. Okay, because like head to head, you're looking at, I just want to give people how crazy some of these scenarios are. Head to head, like you're looking at potentially Tampa Bay and Fort Lauderdale like tied at 5. You're looking at Dallas and Tampa Bay tied on head to head goal differential, goals scored. They would have to go down to like disciplinary points if that happened.
Right.
So I want people to understand it's not that Anna and I are trying to like keep things from you. It's truly that every single match up to this point has so many different scenarios attached to it that the one thing that we can say is that Brooklyn needs to focus on their match this weekend versus Carolina. If they win, then they will add themselves into that pile of chaos. If they lose, or draw, they are eliminated this weekend. That's about as sure of a thing as we can tell you.
Like if Brooklyn wins, they'll end up with 41 points, which is
Yep,
currently the same amount of points that Spokane has in third
correct.
place. So it's
Correct.
crazy to me that Brooklyn has put themselves in a position in the fall to be fighting for it as we head into the second to last weekend
Yeah.
of regular
Yeah,
season play.
and even with Spokane, if they went out, so if they went out, they'd be on 44 points. That would be that last match against Fort Lauderdale.
Yep.
They would be in, but even their placement within the table would be determined based off Dallas's results, right? So
Right.
like truly there is nothing that we can, pinpoint you. All we can do is tell you some likely scenarios that can happen. And hey, I'll give you another one. If Fort Lauderdale gets a win and a draw in their next 2 of 3 matches remaining. A Fort Lauderdale win versus DC, which is likely, they would be on 40 points.
Hmm.
They would then draw maybe with Dallas. They would be on 41 points. And then Fort Lauderdale and Spokane would enter into our last match tied at 41, and the winner would move on to be 43 points. And then you're still looking at a tiebreaker for fourth. So that's just another scenario that you got in
Yeah.
the mix.
And next week is going to end up being a conversation of who wants that second spot because
Correct.
we all know home field advantage plays into a lot of playoffs, especially when you're looking at teams like Tampa Bay who get a great crowd, Dallas
Yeah.
who gets a great crowd, Fort Lauderdale who gets a great crowd. So
Yeah.
lot left to discuss. Let's look at decision day. That'll
Yep.
happen on the 31st because we will discuss that next week. But we've got Carolina at Dallas, Spokane at Fort Lauderdale, and DC at Lexington, which the DC at Lexington doesn't matter in terms of playoffs.
Correct.
However, it is the decision day match. So it's going to be Carolina at Dallas, Spokane at Fort Lauderdale that will decide a lot of this.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, so much exciting stuff. You know, you always wish when you go into a brand new season that decision day means everything. And let's also acknowledge that the Super League, kudos to them for having decision day. That's so important for like building that
Couldn't agree more.
excitement.
Couldn't agree more.
So May 31st is going to be absolutely chaotic, but we
It
can't
it
wait.
also it also encourages the team, and like we've seen, having a decision day, like if you don't have that, I'm not sure we're seeing the same kind of input from
No.
DC. And we're seeing DC play some of the best soccer. I know we're not talking about them, but they've had a terrific spring, a very, very positive spring. And even they are helping decide this match. We talked about that Tampa Bay. If Tampa Bay loses to DC and they stay on 43 points, now all of a sudden Tampa Bay is in a tie-breaking situation. So I just think the importance, I want to absolutely say you are spot on, the importance and the value that Decision Day has within a league, especially a growing league, to not
Mhm.
only build excitement for the fans, for us, within it, but to also continue encouraging these teams to have such a winning mentality as they go through that final stretch. It's massive.
It's huge. That's why we're in the position that we are in because it's been such a tight season. You go into matches and you have no idea who's going to get the result. I believe Fort Lauderdale is going to drop to DC just because I've not been impressed enough with Fort Lauderdale and DC has impressed me. In the latter half of the spring, I mean, head coach Phil Nana, who's filled in as an interim and has taken this team to a position that's so exciting. What are you laughing at?
I'm just no, because like that is just
Yeah,
like if it happens,
crazy.
like
And I
if
could be
that
wrong. You
happens
could be
and
listening to this show right now and be like, past Anna, you're an idiot. But
no, no. It's fine. It's fine. That's what we do. We put ourselves out there, right?
we do. We do. Another gal who put herself out there this weekend is Carolina's Relly Parker at the NASCAR. And she's
My
a big
girl.
NASCAR girl. She went to Alabama. She's a Southern gal. But
I
after
love that.
after Tampa Bay and Carolina tied this past weekend. We were chatting about this event she was going to, and she's like, I got my camo pants laid out, I've got my denim top. She was back and forth on the cowboy hat, and I was honestly disappointed she didn't go with it. So we're gonna have to chat with her about it. But when I laid out Riley Parker should be our gal this week, you were thrilled about the NASCAR piece. Are you
Yes.
a big NASCAR girl?
I'm a motorsport, right? I love motorsport. I was one of the ones that hopped on when F1 Drive to Survive came out on Netflix. I was
Yes.
like, well, what have I been missing this whole time? And now that's part of my like, Saturday routine. I love qualify. I even watch like the practices on ESPN Plus.
Really?
Don't judge me. Yes.
Good for
So
you.
I'm trying to expand that, into obviously NASCAR. I am a Southern gal myself. I know that you are obviously near the headquarters of
Of
NASCAR.
course.
And so I actually thought that that was the most fitting. I know it's not a sponsorship or anything, but that was like the most fitting player outing I've ever seen in my life. And let me
Right?
just say, her outfit absolutely slay. I know most of the time that we like don't talk about Riley in terms of like her style or like kind of being one to like showcase herself, but I loved the effort that she put into making sure that like not only the outfit was spot on, but she was talking on social media. I was like, Riley, like I
I
covered you
know.
in Alabama and I've never seen the side of you.
It's so fun. Like her face lit up when we brought up NASCAR.
Incredible.
And like you said, I mean, it's huge here in the Carolinas. I'm a fan of NASCAR. I'm not like watching every weekend, but I'm excited to get Riley's take. We're going
Mm.
to have her on the show right after this, so stick with us. It's game week on Sirius XM.
Bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome back to Game Week on Sirius XM. We are now joined by Carolina Ascent, also known as Miss NASCAR in my eyes, the Miss Riley Parker. We are all wearing our cowboy hats. Mine's kind of a makeshift, more of like a drinking in the vineyards hat. But for the sake of this interview, we're all sporting the hats. Riley, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you here. Congratulations on winning the USL Super League Players Shield. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about your day at NASCAR. There was a car wrapped in Gainbridge. You had the opportunity to go out with a few other Super League players. What was that experience all like for you?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was so much fun, just like packed day of full NASCAR festivities.
Mhm.
Um, I think that I lived out my dream just short of getting to drive the actual race car, but it was unbelievable. I mean, they just I felt like they rolled out the red carpet for us. And everybody was just so nice. It was super cool to meet some of the girls from around the league. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So it was a really special day, and I'm glad that I got to go experience that for sure.
We have to talk about, obviously, we're sporting our cowboy hats and we're a little disappointed with Riley Parker's decision.
Yeah, what
There
the
was a
heck?
debate. There was a hot debate, and don't get me wrong, guys. Make sure you go to the USL Super League social media. Her outfit was fire. Your outfit was fire. I'm gonna give it to you. It was perfect for you, like your personality. It was perfect for the occasion. But there was a debate on whether or not you were gonna wear a cowboy hat, and you chose not to. And I need you to take us inside the mental chatter as to why this did not happen because you obviously can pull off that.
A cowboy hat.
Okay, so my thought process was I for like a couple days I was like I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to
Days.
wear.
Okay. I mean,
No, okay. I, we're going. They were rolling out the red carpet for us. I'm not. Didn't want to just. I had to show up. I had to show out. This is what
Mhm.
I'm built for. Um, I think in another life I might have been Ricky Bobby. I like to go fast. Uh, so yeah, I thought I hate to let the people down, but I
mm,
was like, I feel like my cowboy hat might be too hot for an all day affair. So I was like, I don't know. And this is like, okay, this is like a rancher
no,
vibe.
it is. It for sure
So, I
is.
mean, she's
Yeah.
tall, she's
Yeah.
awesome, but I
They're
was
they're
like,
hard to hug. Look, people don't talk about this enough, right? They're cute. We love them. They especially when the hair's got volume, we love it. Okay. But
Mhm.
from like a interaction, you're meeting people, shaking hands, hugging,
yeah,
other girls, and it's like, how do we
yeah, how do
do
we,
this?
yeah, it just
I
felt like
text him.
I was, I didn't want to do too much. I thought it might be too
Mm.
much. This is my hard hat. and I have this felt one, but this is for fall, winter. This is a cold
Yeah, that
month.
wouldn't
summer
match
hat.
the camo and the denim top.
No, and so I was like, I can't do that. And then I was like, I feel like this one will be like walking billboard too much. I was like, didn't want to be. I already feel like I stick out probably a little bit. So I was like, maybe I should.
That's why we love you.
Yeah, maybe I should try to reel it in as much as I
Oh,
can. So I hate to let the people down.
Yeah.
Next time, if they invite me out, hopefully
okay,
they'll
that's
have me
why we
back,
have it on now.
and
Yeah.
I'll make
Hey,
it work for the next time.
you're still young. You're still young in your career. You could make that pivot to NASCAR. You told me after that game against Tampa Bay that there was a dream in the young Riley Mattingly Parker life that you wanted to be a NASCAR driver. How did we go from wanting to be a NASCAR driver to now being a professional soccer player?
You know, I don't know where it all went wrong. I think just the calling was soccer. So okay, I'll tell you where it went wrong. We have some land out in East Texas. My sister's 3 years older than me, and so like when we were young, my dad would let us drive, and we were like, around when you can reach the pedals, like you get to kind
It's
of
giving Drive by Alan Jackson right now.
yes, when daddy let me drive.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So Molly, my sister Molly, she always got to drive. And so then I finally got tall enough to get to practice. So I got in for the first time in my dad's truck, and I am like pumped because I love to go fast. Like I had a go-kart, and it's just like the pedal is on the floor the whole time. Nobody told me that when you get into an actual car that you don't go pedal all the way down to the floor. It doesn't take a whole lot. But I also didn't care. So I got in, and my sister and my friend were in the bed of the truck, and I just put the whole pedal on the floor. And my sister and my friend hit the back of the truck, and they were like, slow down, slow down. And I was like, I can't, I'm a race car driver. And then I wasn't allowed to drive again until I was 15. So I think honestly, my potential was stifled, and I blame my parents. So
Or you
I'm
saved
blaming
a
mom.
few lives in the
That's
meantime.
true.
You never know.
Yeah, maybe so. Also, there's a funny video of me after I got my wisdom teeth out, and my mom had videoed me, and I was on the feeling good medicine, and I was like, I think I could have driven home. I was like, I think that would be dangerous, and I said, yeah, for all the other cars, because I'm fast and furious. Meow. And I was like, okay, so
So
even
not
yeah.
only is NASCAR, in your potential retirement future, but also if Fast and Furious continue to make movies, you're like, hey, call me up. Like
That's
I'm
what I'm saying.
here.
Yeah, I'll probably be in the Fast 45. I'll probably be in that one. That'll be mine.
We can only hope that they've stopped making movies by that time, but that's neither here nor there. We digress.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a player or your person who your personality is kind of like pedal to the metal. One thing I want to just take you all the way back, obviously, because it took you some time to find your footing in Super League, right? Going from Tampa Bay to Carolina, it's obviously been an incredible fit for you, and you've been a part of some special moments with that club. But you really broke out on the national soccer scene back when you were at Alabama. And for those of you that don't know, and we've talked about this with a couple different people, in the Super League, there's some girls who have come from precarious places, right? When it comes to being known for soccer. Alabama, as a powerhouse of a sports program as they are, soccer was never really that thing they were known for. That 2022 team, also your teammate Ashlyn Sarepka, part of that. You guys broke onto the national scene, and it was fast, it was furious, and that was really led by you. You were recovering from an ACL injury. You became an All-American in that 2022 season, one of the nation's top goal scorers. You set program records all over the place. So I want to know about that moment for you as a player, right? Because a lot of times you don't see that kind of jump after an ACL recovery, especially. But for you, what was it about that environment, that season, maybe the goals that Alabama team set out for that really allowed you personally to succeed?
Yeah, I think I mean I laugh when you're like, "Oh, is led by me," cuz I think of we couldn't have been successful without that upperclassmen group. Like
Mhm.
we had Ashlyn Sorepka, Riley Tanner plays for Spokane, Matt McKinley Crone plays for Orlando Pride, Raina Reyes plays at Portland. I mean, I just named you 4 girls who are playing pro. The other girl that was co-captain with me, she hung up the boots, but I mean, she was an unbelievable leader.
Yep.
So we just had a really special group in general and of upperclassmen. So it was, I mean, they just made it really easy on me too, to come back. Felicia Knox, I don't want to forget Felicia Knox, Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
She's on the team. I mean, she assisted probably half of my goals. I
Oh
think the
yeah.
first goal that I scored that season, I honestly don't even think I moved. I think she crossed it and I think it hit off my foot and went into the goal. Like I was like, oh, I didn't even have to, I didn't have to work for it. So I was just surrounded by some amazing players and people, and we just had so much fun. And I think coming back from my ACL, uh, yeah, I think it was just being surrounded by
Mhm.
amazing people, like the girls, the athletic trainer. Don't tell him I said that though. uh, and the staff. So I mean, they gave me all the tools that I needed to be successful, and we just had an amazing group. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like just when I think about some of my favorite times, that team. I mean, I think we lost 3 times
Yeah.
that whole season.
Yeah.
So it's definitely fun to win, for sure. But yeah, I think just being surrounded by some awesome people and players what it was the reason why I had so much success too.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama set the foundation for your career. You go on to get drafted by Racing Louisville. You spend some time in the NWSL. You spent some time in Mexico. You go to the Super League. You join Tampa Bay, and now you're on this Carolina team who has been electric. And we talked about how this team has 44 goals on the season. You now have 22 goals in your last 7 matches. That is incredibly hard to do. You look at like Charlotte FC down the street in Charlotte. They're a team that can't find the back of the net right now, and they don't have that continuity, but they have great individual play. Carolina Ascent, they have great individual play and they have continuity. So when you look at the attack, why haven't you guys had an issue with the plethora of goals and the plethora of goal scorers?
Um, so I think it probably goes back to just the beginning of the spring. Um, I felt like, coming in the middle of a season to a new team, it's kind of like a little bit scary, a little bit nerve wracking, and you don't really know how it's going to go and how you're going to fit in. But I mean, the first couple games, at least I definitely felt like, okay, like this is a really good foundation. And I feel like over the past, string of games, the past couple months, we are just seeing the execution of the hard work that we put in that off season leading up to this spring season. Because I think you think back to one of the first games. I mean, we outshot our opponents like 19-3 shots, 20-5 shots, and like, but we were still we lost to Fort Lauderdale. We came away with the tie against DC, but we were still out shooting our opponents. But we were like, why isn't it falling? So I think really just the longer that we have played together, and the commitment to excellence and training every day, I think we all knew that it was going to eventually start falling for us, and I think it just has. We've started to hit that stride.
There's been a commitment to professionalism, and it echoes kind of what you said about Alabama. And one of the things that Anna and I touch on in a different part of the show is, one of the things that have made you guys special is not only that commitment to professionalism, right? A club that gives you the tools, access to all the tools that you need to build that proper foundation. That's one. But it's also a buy-in from the players in the locker room that they're A, all aligned on a goal, and B, they don't really care what role they play within that goal. What has the environment of women been like at Carolina Ascent? Because it seems to me from the outside that what you described at Alabama has really played a huge foundation of what Carolina Ascent has been able to do, and part of the reason that you guys have been able to succeed.
Yeah, I think when I left Alabama, I was I was so proud of what we had accomplished, but I was also so sad because I was like, man, I'm never gonna get this again. Like, I'm never gonna get to like feel this camaraderie, this like you said, everybody just like embracing their role, the commitment to excellence every single day. And that I got to Carolina and I bounced around to a couple teams and
Yeah.
great environments too. I'm not saying that they weren't like that, but there's something special about this team and this club that has that factor of what I experienced at Alabama. So I just feel really lucky to be a part of it because um, you know, leaving my college career on such a high and
Yeah.
bittersweet, thinking
Yeah.
that you're never going to get to have that again, and then to get to have some of that same feeling has been really cool.
Yeah, I mean, being able to be on the sideline this season, I've been able to witness the relationships and how much you guys really just enjoy being around each other. And it's not fake. I've been in playing experiences before, and I know what it's like to kind of fake that in order to get the results. So it's been such a joy to see your guys' relationship grow. And I'm sure that's something you guys really cherish and why you are at the top of the standings. I know that Philip has been a big piece to the success and how Coach Poole has built so much, but you can't. I want to give the flowers to one of your owners in Dan D'Amico. He is in every single
Shouts.
picture with you guys, and he is such a nice guy. He's at training every week, he's at every single game. He truly loves building this Super League and building the Ascent. What has having an owner like that done for you guys?
I cannot say enough good things about Mr. Dan. I like to call him Mr. Dan. All the girls laugh at me. I'm from
The
Dallas. That's what we
respect.
do. Respect. It's respect. I can't say enough good things about him. Before I even met him, he had sent me a couple of emails just like, "We're so excited to have you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so nice."
So
And I
nice.
mean, he was there today. I mean, on reentry days, he's like the first training session of the week in the match day -1, he's there. And so like it just goes back to the standard of excellence and just the uniqueness of the club that we have and the professionalism and just everybody pulling the same way. He's unbelievable. We're so lucky to have an owner like him that he's so present and just like whatever we need. And one of the first things that he talked to me about, he was like, I do this because I want you to live your dream.
Mm.
Like I don't do this for any other reason other than I want to give you the tools to live out your dream. And like I've just never heard an owner speak, talk to me like that and just feel so like personal. Like it's like he wants that for each one of the players, but it feels it's personal at the same
Yeah.
time. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. He's hilarious. He's awesome. He is yeah, he's always out at training. And yeah, you could go around leagues all over the world and people haven't met their owners and so just extremely lucky to have him to be at the helm of the club for sure. He's awesome.
Well, you have some interesting, I'm gonna say that we're getting into a little different thing. We did a deep dive, obviously we always do, right? As much as hey, shout outs to everybody in the front office, but we'll go back there, no doubt about it, because it takes a village. It takes players doing their job, it takes a coaching staff understanding a game model for the people there, and it takes a front office willing to support that every step of the way. You have a husband.
I
You got
do.
married. You actually we talked about it just before this interview, how you just threw everyone for a loop because going into your fifth year of college at Alabama, you went from being Riley Mattingly to Riley Mattingly Parker. We didn't know what to call you. We finally just dropped that. We're just Riley Parker. But you guys are having interesting hashtags that I've seen on some of your anniversary posts. And I
Okay.
just want to read one of 3 years flies. This was, you said your anniversary was what in January, so this was several months ago. And the post reads 3 years flies when you've moved 7 times. Happy anniversary to a ribeyes worst nightmare. Hashtag vegetables are poison. Hashtag beef and fruit only. Hashtag still don't have a dog. hashtag cue sound of music. So I have two questions about that. Number one, do we really only eat beef and fruit? Love that for you. Consistency, simplicity, if so. And do we still not have a dog?
So we only eat beef and fruit. That is, I would say, oh my gosh, I'm ready to cry.
And sourdough.
And sourdough.
And sourdough.
And sourdough. So John John is the best. Like, he is the best. We actually tried to get married when I was a sophomore at Alabama, and my dad was like, not happening. You have to graduate first. And so I graduated, and then the 2 days after, we got engaged, and I had torn my ACL, so I ended up taking my 5th year, which obviously ended up being like best thing ever, right? But we were married that last year, and I told him when we first were talking about getting married, and I was like, look, it's been my dream to play professional soccer ever since I was a kid, and I'm just going to let you know that there's a lot of moving around that's involved. Little did I know how much actually. But I was like, are you willing to follow me, like, and come with me? And I was so scared because I was like, this is going to be make or break. Like, he's not going to want to date me. He's not going to want to get married. And he was like, yeah, okay, yeah. And I was like, okay. You know, it's one thing to say it and it's another thing to do it. Like, he's just been awesome coming with me everywhere. He's been such a trooper. He's never complained a single time. I actually think he might like moving more than, like, I don't love moving, but I think he likes it. I think he's had fun. So there's a couple of things. So he hasn't really, like, we've moved a million times. So, and every time, like, when I was in Louisville, he got a job working with like this carpenter or whatever. And then we ended up I ended up getting waived, and so he didn't get to do that. And then we were in Mexico, and he had made a friend, and he was going to start working at his gym. And then I went back to, that was before Louisville. So he's not had a traditional job, is what I'm getting at. And because of me. And so whenever anybody asks me like, oh, what does your husband do? I say that he's a private chef / nutritionist for a high profile athlete. And that is me. So he's the one that really has gotten into the whole like sourdough and like only beef and fruits kick, which I hate vegetables. I've never eaten vegetables. So I'm like, this is a dream come true for me. But yeah. And unfortunately though, his one red flag is that we still don't have a dog. So I need some people to rally together and really peer pressure him, because I've been trying for the past 3 years and have yet to be successful, but I will wear him down. I am persistent.
Okay. I'm Team John on this. I understand.
I'm not.
I don't want the responsibility of a pet when I don't have kids. I don't understand why I understand why people love it because they love dogs. But if you don't love dogs, I'm out on it. Marion might have another take, and I know she does.
Absolutely. John, I know you're in the room. Okay. I know you're there. We're getting her a dog. All right. Even if it's
John.
Even if you have to foster for a few months just to like, understand it.
I on my Instagram, I have a highlight like story on my profile that's like the dogs that I meet, because I'm like, my motto is pet one dog a day.
Absolutely. And it's almost like, eat an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah. Apple a
day.
Pet
one dog a day.
A dog a day.
Okay. Pet one dog a day. See. You'll have to keep us updated on this journey. One of my favorite shows growing up, Riley, was Barney. I was obsessed with Barney. And I've recently learned that you were a cast member on Barney. At least you featured on the show. Tell us about what it was like to live out my actual dream.
To live out your actual dream, it was so cool. It was awesome. And I wanted to do it so bad, but my mom was like I was just had like a small part in a couple episodes, and then I was like gonna try out and be one of the audition to be one of like the main kids. And then my mom was like, yeah, I don't think that I want that for you. So again, with the parents, they ruined my actress dream, and they ruined my NASCAR dream. So what are they good for? But but it was really cool. And I like to joke around. Obviously, I like to joke around a bunch, but I'm also still like pretty intense, and like when it comes to stuff, certain things, I take it pretty seriously. So I'm in like second grade, and there's these other, however old you are in second grade, 7, 8 year olds, and they're like messing around, and I was like, pay attention, Barney's gonna have us kicked off the set. Like getting on to them because they were messing around, and I was like, guys, you're trying to blow this for me. But it was awesome.
Life worked out. Life worked out. The mailman's in town. That means
mailman's here.
We gotta wrap things up. Riley, thank you so much for joining the show. Loved hearing about your NASCAR experience, everything it entails so far this season, and your journey in soccer. Congratulations on winning the Players' Shield. Really excited for this team. It's not over yet. And thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this week on this week's version of Game Week. You can join us every single Wednesday on the USL YouTube page, or you can check us out on SiriusXM. If you are on Team Riley, make sure you DM her husband, flood his DMs, let him know that she needs a dog, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
You've been listening to USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.